Hey guys, this is Chaos Chrono back with the last display of this case. Display number 12. It's been a long road. Let's continue on and see what we got in today's display. As I crack everything open, again, let's plug my team podcast, Team ESP. Feel free to check us out for other Keyforge content discussions. After this, I'll be doing 2 streams, probably 1 case or each stream of unboxings. If that's something you're interested in, please let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I'm tempted to just open it all myself and see if I do get a junk out of it or not. Now moving on to the first deck, we have Rhodes of Narrowsea Bay. It's a Disc Logos and Shadows deck. For Amber Generation, we're starting with 9 pips of Amber, and supporting cards like Schuler, Hecatomb's Effect, Binate Rupture, Gamgee, Nerve Blast, Ronnie, Swindle, 2 copies of Throwing Stars, Umbra, Redlock, and Mac the Knife, giving me a total of about 21 or more for Amber Generation. For Amber Control, we have Schuler, Gamgee, Nerve Blast, Ronnie, Swindle, and Umbra, as well as Lash of Broken Dreams for Control, giving me a total of about 6. For Artifact Control, we have Neutron Shark, giving me a solid 1. For Creature Control, we have Unlock Gateway, Pain Reaction, Hecatomb maybe if we're playing against this, Neutron Shark, Life for a Life, 2 copies of Throwing Stars, and Whistling Darts for direct removal, as well as supporting cards like Mac the Knife, giving me total creature control of 8. For speed, we have Igor, Helperbot, Wall Wormhole, DOX Researcher, Perplexing Sophistry, as well as Professor Sutterkin and Brain Eater for a bit of support. Overall speed, I'm going to rate about a 6. As for highlights, this is a full toolkit deck. Decent specs all around, maybe a little lacking in the Amber control department. However, we do have a couple of bad combos or missing pieces, like Binate Rupture without Interdimensional Graft makes Binate Rupture very limited. Burst without Kichi like Hecatomb or Binate Rupture. There's no hard Amber control like Interdimensional Graft or Too Much to Protect. And Amber Imp is a card that I just never liked from day 1, as it has a double-sided effect. There are 20 creatures in this deck, so all in all, a bit more board dependent. And my take on this deck is that it's well-rounded, but has some incomplete combo pieces. So I'm going to rate this deck at a 62. For deck number 2, we have Avaldi Plinth Stonemason. It's a Broadnar Disc and Logos deck. Starting with Amber Generation, we have 6 pips of Amber. Supporting cards include Fuzel, Blood Money, the War Chest, Dust Imp, Misery Exploit, Schuler, and Cutthroat Research, for a total of about 15. Amber Control, we have Grok, Charette, Schuler, Cutthroat Research, and for key cost control, Grunt Buggy, giving me a total of about 5. There is no artifact control in this deck. For creature control, we have Ramo, Pound, Flamethrower, Gargantus Scrapper, Banish, Key to Dis, and Bouncing Death Cork, giving me a total of about 7. And for speed, we have Library of the Damned, Helperbot, Professor Sutterkin, 2 copies of Wild Wormholes, DYX Researcher, Memory Chip, and some supporting cards like Juggernaut and Archimedes, give me a total of about 8. And just as special mentions, we do have good disruption and potentially a lockout in Binding Irons and 2 copies of Tesmal. Some highlights of this deck include Grunt Buggy with Cutthroat Research, Double Tesmal, and Juggernaut with the Bramo to pair with. So for the bad, it's somewhat dependent on the artifacts in this deck. There are several of them. We have 8 artifacts, which is quite a number of artifacts given this set, probably the highest I've seen. And without any sort of artifact control, there are some that might become a little double-edged later on, or you have to really keep an eye on what the opponent has as artifact control options. All 3 houses in this deck compete for the main house role in terms of like what deck you want to keep calling on to make use of creatures that's on the board. There's a fairly even split of creatures and in terms of effect benefits, so all in all they're all competing for that role. So to summarize, it's a deck lacking in most specs, but has good pacing. The competing roles reduces the synergy between the houses, so I'm going to rate this deck at a 60. For deck number 3, we have the Agreeable Weasel of Nevertucket. It's a Logos, Mars, and Shadows deck. For Amber Generation, we have 9 pips of Amber to start, and supporting cards like Nodge's Power, Mars Needs Amber, Mind Warper, Gamgee, Ronnie, Umbra, Dust Runner, and 2 copies of Too Much to Protect, giving me a total of about 18 or more for Amber Generation. For Amber Control, we have Mars Needs Amber, Mind Warper, Gamgee, Ronnie, Umbra, Dust Runner, and the 2 copies of TMTP, giving me a total of about 8. Once again, there is no artifact control in this deck. For creature control, we have Standardized Testing, Carpet Foxum, and Mother Gun, so it is pretty lacking in this deck. For speed, we have 2 copies of Igor, 2 copies of Sutterkin, Titan Librarian, Sloppy Lab Work, Knowledge's Power, Dust Chronicles, and Hidden Stash. as well as supporting cards like the 3 Archimedes, Mars First, and Vesma Thinkdrome. As for the highlights, it's got surprising potential in Amber Generation, mainly due to the 2 copies of Too Much to Protect, Amber Control in terms of the total number, and the speed as well. We do have Mars Needs Amber with Entropic Manipulator, so if there was damage that could be spread across the board, other than the Carpet Flotsam, that would be nice to move damage across the opponent's board in order to make the most out of a Mars Needs Amber play. We have the 2 copies of Too Much to Protect with some single target or single steals as well, like Ronnie, Umbra's Fight, and Dust Runner on whatever creature you're going to reap with. So those are methods to take the opponent off a key, assuming key costs remain at the normal 6. However, there is a severe lack of creature control and artifact control. The 3 copies of Archimedes is a bit much. I think replacing Archimedes, one of them at least, with something else could give this deck more value. We have 3 copies of Bad Penny, which is obviously bad, given that there's no life for life, and nothing that you could pair well with the Bad Penny to make use of her. So all in all, that's 3 dead cards, and 3 cards that potentially will clog up your hand throughout the game. We have 22 creatures in this deck, so that Carpet Flotsam is going to be unlikely to fire unless your opponent wiped your board, as we want to keep our board active. So again, that reduces our board control even more, and that Standardized Testing will definitely hit our small creatures, particularly the Bad Pennies, maybe just a Lemindra if you don't play the Bad Pennies, and otherwise a bunch of your 2-power creatures, which you don't want to do. To summarize, it's a board-heavy deck with surprising speed that can take on higher Amber Rush decks, but will suffer against good board control decks. I'm going to rate this deck at about a 55. For deck number 4, we have Fantastic Checkmate Jhuj. It's a Logos, Mars, and Shadows deck. For Amber Generation, we have 6 pips of Amber to start, and supporting cards like Mars Needs Amber, Furtive Investors, Nerf Blast, Ronnie, Umbra, and Little Nif, giving a total of about 12 for Amber Generation. For Amber Control, we have Mars Needs Amber, Nerf Blast, Ronnie, Umbra, and Little Nif, as well as Skeleton Key, giving a total of about 6. Once again, there is no artifact control in this deck. For creature control, we have Nerf Blast, Whistling Darts, and Lights Out, with supporting cards like Seismo Tangler and 2 copies of Collector Worm. So once again, it's a low creature control count at about a 3. For speed, we have the 2 copies of Sutterkin and Field of the Researcher, as well as supporting cards like the 3 Archimedes, Mars First, and Vesma Thinkdrome. As for highlights, I'm a little hard-pressed to find much. I guess the Disruption components of this deck would be a good part about it, and obviously Ronnie's a great card. But all in all, this deck is pretty lackluster. It's got 25 creatures, so incredibly board-heavy, and they're all relatively small creatures. Your board control is largely board-based, nothing that truly wipes. And really, this deck feels like a conglomeration of cards and creatures with effects that reinforce other friendly cards or disrupt opponents, but there isn't really any substance to reinforce in this deck. So overall, I'm going to rate this deck at a 48. For deck number 5, we have Danjuma, the Prudently Vapid. It's a Logos, Mars, and Shadows deck. For Amber Generation, we have 13 pips of Amber to start, and supporting cards like Cutthroat Research, Interdimensional Graft, Mars Needs Amber, Mind Warper, Harvester, KMG, 2 copies of Nerve Blast, Ronnie, Sucker Punch, Throwing Stars, Rig Lottery, and Treasure Map, giving me a total of about 23 or more for Amber Generation. For Amber Control, we have Cutthroat Research, Interdimensional Graft, Mars Needs Amber, Mind Warper, KMG, 2 copies of Nerve Blast, and Ronnie, as well as Nizic Resonator for Amber key cost control, giving me a total of about 9 for Amber Control. For Artifact Control, we do have Remote Access, giving us 0.5. For Creature Control, we have Poke, Standardized Testing, Harlan Mindlock, Carpet Flotsam, Mother Gun, Sample Collection, 2 copies of Nerve Blast, Sucker Punch, Throwing Stars, Whistling Darts, Bone Rot Venom, and Lethal Distraction, as well as supporting cards like the 2 copies of Agent Human and Zorg, giving me a total creature control of about 12 or more. For speed, we have Helperbot, Hybrid Babble, Poke, Field of the Researcher, and your Goggle, as well as supporting cards like Combat Pheromones and some Disruption and Merkins, giving me a total speed of about 6. For highlights, this is a well-rounded toolkit deck. The Nizic Resonator does help with the efficacy of the Cutthroat Research, and there's no competition for archiving. It's really for putting your opponent's creatures away. There's no friendly archiving in this deck. As for the bad, we do have 2 copies of Pip Pip. Any permanent effects, while it's nice to have that consistency, with this being a somewhat weaker effect, I don't really like to see multiple copies as compared to like something like a Dust Switch, which would be very nice. This deck has 16 creatures, so leans towards a race style of play, which the Ember generation definitely supports, and the speed is not too bad. Overall, it's a well-rounded deck that has just a few less valuable cards, like the Pip-Pip I was mentioning, and better artifact control that might hold it back. Overall, I'm going to rate this deck at a 68. For deck number 6, we have Miss Whompmorphic Killingham. It's a Dis, Mars, and Untamed deck. Starting with Amber generation, we have 8 Pips of Amber, with supporting cards like Dust Imp, Misery Exploit, Schuler, Mindwarper, Harvester, Full Moon, and Life Web, giving me a total of about 16. For Amber control, we have Charette, Schuler, Mindwarper, and Life Web, along with Lash of Broken Dreams for key cost control, giving me a total of about 4. For artifact control, there's Grasping Vines, so that's 0.5. And creature control, we have Banish, Carpet Flotsam, Sample Collection, they're everywhere, along with supporting cards like Zookeeper and Pickpocket Jaga, giving me a total of about 4. For speed, we have Invasion Portal and Punctuated Equilibrium, as well as supporting cards like 2 copies of Exhume, Vesma Think Drone, 2 copies of Dust Switch, 2 copies of Glimmer, and Song of Spring, giving me a total speed of 4 in terms of directly impacting draw, archive, or discarding. As for highlights, we do have Invasion Portal with 8 Martian creatures, so that can be pretty effective. We have Misery Exploit that pairs well with the They're Everywhere and Carpet Flotsam. Fortunately, those cards are not in the same house, so it may or may not hit. As for bad, there is a high creature count once again at 21 creatures with that Carpet Flotsam, so that might not hit that consistently, lowering that creature control even more. Overall, it's a deck with limited specs and not much in the way of combos, but plenty of disruption with the streaks and the punctuated equilibrium, as well as the archiving of your opponent's board. All in all, I'm going to rate this deck at a 57. For deck number 7, we have Fannius, the Midwife of Dance. It's a Dis, Sanctum, and Untamed deck for Ember generation with 5 Pips of Ember to start, with supporting cards like Mother Northel, 2 copies of Full Moon, and Rustnar, giving me a total of about 9. For Amber control, we have 2 copies of Avaldi, as well as key cost control in Flash of Broken Dreams and Anguish, and supporting cards like Barrister Joya, giving me a total of about 4 for Amber control. Artifact control, we do have Gorm of Alm and Rustnar, giving me 1.5. For creature control, we have Banish, Key to Dis, Smite, and Harder They Come, as well as supporting cards like 3 copies of Ember Imp, Blinding Light, and Pickpocket Jaga, giving me a total of about 4. For speed, there's nothing that directly impacts it, so I'm going to rate it as a 0. However, we do have Not Finished With You, 2 copies of Dust Switch, and Gravity Cycle for efficiencies. All in all, the good parts about this deck would be like the odd baits with the Mother Northel. So there's something that Mother Northel can actually transfer Amber from to your pool. However, once again, this is a very board heavy deck with 22 creatures, and the creatures that are there are more supportive in nature, as well as we have multiple copies of a card I really dislike, like Amber Imp. We do have the double Full Moon and several untamed creatures we can play to make that key charge happen, but there's no archiving we can capitalize on to help set that up. So it really depends on you drawing it into your hand. Really, I didn't think I would find a worse deck than one of the previous ones, but this deck has a lot of disruption and efficiency, but again, no foundation to actually enhance the performance of. So I'm going to rate this deck at a 45. For deck number 8, we have Hanson the Ruby. It's a Brobnar, Sanctum, and Untamed deck. For Ember generation, we have 11 Pips of Ember to start, with supporting cards like Blood Money, The Flex, Healing Blast, Prince Derek, Darna, Rustnar, and Flaxia, giving me a total of about 20 or more for Ember generation. For Amber control, we have Borden the Redeemed and 2 copies of Take Hostages, giving me a total of about 3. For artifact control, we do have Rustnar, giving me 0.5. For creature control, we have Bramo, Pound, Phoenix Heart, Save the Pack, Nature's Call, as well as supporting cards like Into the Fray, Tremor, Rock Clearing Giant, Blinding Light, Golden Aura, Hallowed Shield, Shield of Justice, Radiant Truth, and One Stood Against Many, giving me a total creature control of about 8 or more. For speed, there's nothing, again, that impacts speed, so I'll rate that as a 0. However, we do have the Grey Rider and Dust Switch for some efficiency. As for highlights, there's good amber generation and creature control, but it's lacking in the amber control and speed department. The low creature count deck with low speed doesn't really match that well. Typically, the low creature count works better in a rush deck. Interesting components is the Heart of the Forest with 2 key cheats in Untamed and potential Amber Burst in Untamed. So this is looking to be a Heart of the Forest dependent deck, but has very poor Amber control. But for the most part, this deck is going to focus on the Heart of the Forest play, where you're sitting on 1 key. You hold your opponent back until you're ready to double forage on one of your turns. Archiving would have definitely helped this deck a lot, but without that, you're at the mercy of the hands that you draw. All in all, I'm going to rate this deck at a 60. For deck number 9, we have Private Meteorquill von Drak. It's a Brobnar, Sanctum, and Shadows deck. For Amber Generation, we have 7 pips of Amber, with supporting cards like Weasel, the Flex, the War Chest, Healing Blast, Furtive Investors, Ronnie, Sucker Punch, Swindle, Throwing Stars, Brand, Dusk Runner, Little Nif, and Shroud of Greed, giving me a total of about 20 or more. For Amber Control, we have Maruk the Marked, Take Hostages, Ronnie, Swindle, Brand the Fanatic, Dusk Runner, and Little Nif, and some support in Avon the Armorsmith for that Maruk play. Give me a total Amber Control about 7. Once again, there is no artifact control in this deck. For creature control, we have Bramo, Flamewake Shaman, Gargantus Scrapper, Smite, Harder They Come, Spirit's Way, Sucker Punch, and Throwing Stars, as well as supporting cards like Tremor, Shard of Strength, Blinding Light, Golden Aura, and Radiant Truth, giving me a total creature control about 8 or more. For speed, we have Perplexing Sophistry, giving me a solid 1. And we have some disruption with Sir Meros and Barrister Joya. For highlights, there's decent specs all around, and we do have a nice Brobnar main house. There's additional fight and board support in Sanctum. There's the steals you want to see in Shadows. And there's the Drummernot and Bramo combo. However, we do not have a removal option for Brend, which does limit our Amber control a bit. And there is no hard Amber control. There are 17 creatures in this deck, so it's about average, maybe a little below. And there are 2 shards in this deck. This deck has decent specs all around, but depends on having the board to win. A lot of the strength of this deck does depend on the board. All in all, I'm going to rate this deck at a 61. For deck number 10, we have Lamar, Richsy, the 5th. It's a Brobnar Logos and Shadows deck. For Amber Generation, we're starting with 6 bits of Amber. We have Foozle, Smith, Eureka, Gamgee, Nerf Blast, 3 copies of Throwing Stars, Yankee Gang, Brand the Fanatic, and Heist Knight, giving me a total about 18 for Amber Generation. For Amber Control, we have Broke, Burn the Stockpile, Pile of Skulls, Gamgee, Nerf Blast, Yankee Gang, Brand, and Heist Knight, giving me a total of about 8. For Artifact Control, we have Remote Access, giving me 0.5. For Creature Control, we have First Blood, 2 copies of Standardized Testing, Nerf Blast, 3 copies of Throwing Stars, and Whistling Darts, as well as supporting cards like Tremor, giving me total creature control of about 8. For speed, we have Igor, Hexbion, Sutterkin, Wild Wormhole, COX Researcher, and Eureka, as well as supporting cards like Rocket Boots, giving me a total speed of about 6. Now for highlights, we have a Brobnar house for board control and Amber control, and some generation with that Smith. We have Heist Knight with 6 Thieves, which is an interesting point. There are 19 creatures in this deck, so it's pretty average. Overall, I'll rate this deck at a 60 as well. For deck number 11, we have She Who Smoothly Knocks Down Helmets. It's a Mars, Sanctum, and Untamed deck. For Amber Generation, we're looking at 11 pips of Amber to start, and supporting cards like Mars Needs Amber, 2 copies of Harvester, Healing Blast, and Martyr's End, giving me a total of about 16. For Amber Control, we have Mars Needs Amber, Board and the Redeemed, Maruk the Marked, giving me a total of 3. For Artifact Control, we have Destroy Them All, Rustnar, and Grasping Vines, giving me a solid 2. For Creature Control, we have Tixel Beambuckler, Destroy Them All, Exterminate, Foxsome Spike, Smite, The Spirit's Way, and the Common Cold, giving me a total of about 8 or more. For speed, we have Doom of the Martyr and Punctuated Equilibrium, giving me a total of about 3. For support, we have Vesma Think Drone, Sigil Brotherhood, Glimmer, and 2 copies of Song of Spring. For highlights, it's got great artifact control and board control. However, the Amber side of things is very lacking, especially for the Amber control. We have Mars Needs Amber without broad board based damage, so that may not hit very well, which again further limits how much Amber control we have. There's no burst potential in Untamed to pair with that Chota Hazri, but yeah, the main detriment to this deck is the severe lack of Amber control. So overall, I'm going to rate this deck at about a 50. Last but not least, we have deck number 12, Merizari, Pickpocket, Repodapper. It's a Mars, Shadows, and Untamed deck. For Amber generation, we're looking at 13 pips of Amber to start. And supporting cards like Mars Needs Amber, Gamgee, Sucker Punch, Swindle, Umbra, Gangsta Gang, Ice Knight, and Darna, giving me a total of about 20 or more. For Amber control, we have Mars Needs Amber, Gamgee, Swindle, Umbra, Gangsta Gang, and Heist Knight with 7 Thieves, giving me a total of about 6, as well as a key control in Miasma. There is no artifact control in this deck once again. For creature control, we have Carpet Flotsam, Hypno Beam, Sample Collection, Sucker Punch, Whistling Darts, They're Everywhere, Nature's Call, and the Common Cold, as well as supporting cards like Collective Worm and Red Planet Raygun with 7 Mars creatures. So overall creature control, I'm going to rate about an 8 or more. For speed, there once again is anything that directly impacts it. However, we do have supporting cards like Proliferator and 2 copies of Glimmer. The highlights of this deck are the Ember generation and decent board control. There is burst potential in Untamed with that key charge, so that's pretty nice. However, we do have some negatives like the 2 copies of Bad Penny, and the Carpet Flotsam in a deck with 20 creatures. Overall, it's a deck with decent generation and board control, but it's lacking in quality Amber control or the slower control style of play that this deck is inevitably going to do. All in all, I'm going to rate this deck at a 62. So that sums up all the decks in this final display. I appreciate every single one of you guys that's been watching my videos and giving me feedback especially. It's been a pleasure making this series, and I hope to do some more single deck openings, but this style of video is very taxing in terms of time commitment, so unless there's a real desire for this format, I don't think I will be making this particular style of video again. So if there is, please let me know in the comment section below. It also depends on whether or not I have that much product to open in the first place. At the end of the day, we're all pretty excited for Dark Tidings right now, as we see more and more countries starting to see decks come in. But for now, do look forward to my weekly unboxing videos. Just finishing up the last 2 Coda decks, and I'll be moving on to the last Mass Mutations display I have, so keep your eyes peeled for that. With all that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. And as always, be kind and happy forging.